I just reached a point up until 40. I think I just allowed life to happen to me. That's exactly what happened.
Nicola Rowley, once a journalist travelling the world,
now personally helps business owners get seen in the media.
So for anyone that's looking to grow a brand, there are ways that you can very safely utilize the media to the best effect. When it comes down to working with entrepreneurs now in particular and brands, it's about looking at the bigger picture and understanding where it is that you want to be, and then let's work backwards from there.
When is the right time for a business owner to do PR, and how specifically can it help them when it comes to audience building and email list building and things like that?
As long as you have a website so that a journalist can look you up and go, right, okay, great, you're good to go.
Email subject lines so that we stand out. Is there any tips around that?
You can sum up your story in a very short headline. Just use that as the subject line. Bigger brands and things like that, what they really had and what they'd really nailed was...
Oh my God.
And
Nicola, a massive welcome to the Success School podcast. Super excited to dive in to get to know more about you, what you do, how you can help people, and also give some value to our listeners this week. So I'd love you to just dive in right at the deep end and just tell us the important stuff, who you are, what you do, and if you could give us a background of your journey and your story and what's led you here today.
yeah, so well, it's brilliant to be here, first of all. So thanks for having me here, Matt. My journey, I guess it really begins when I turned 40. Up until that point, I'd been very super ambitious. Like I always wanted to go on and do all of these things, but I didn't really, when I look back now, I didn't really know why I wanted to do all of these things. So trained as a journalist, worked as a journalist nationally and internationally, used to read the news on Radio 1. Like I did loads of amazing things, traveled all over the world when I moved into PR, was looking after big brands and TV shows and celebrities. And then I fell pregnant with my son. And the moment that he came along, everything changed, because I think when you put a child into the mix, it doesn't matter how ambitious you are, you can't carry on working in the same way. And he gave me that kind of step back, that moment to actually step back and be like, hang on a second, what is this all about? Why am I doing all of this? So I'd always loved writing and stories and storytelling. It's why I became a journalist in the first place. But I discovered that actually, whilst I was on maternity leave, that I was going to write a book. I knew that I was going to write a book. So it was a bit more of a surprise that it was a children's book. But I saw his reaction when I was reading stories to him. So I wrote James and the Amazing Gift. And that was while I was on maternity leave. And then I promptly left it on my computer because, hey, what am I going to do with that? I don't know what to do with that. And my business coach at the time actually called me out and said, Nicola, we keep coming back to writing. We keep coming back to stories. What is going on? And I was just like, I just have to do this. So I did. I got the book published. I went out there, launched it, did all the things because I understood how PR worked. I became a HuffPost blogger, I was in the Daily Mirror, I was in, Woman and Home magazine, talking about the importance of spreading kindness and why that matters. And that was the subject for the book. And it was intended to bring children into understanding why it matters to have kindness at all levels. The second book that I wrote was James and the Birthday Balloon, and the lovely Dr. Ranj, TV's Dr. Ranj, narrated the audiobook version. And I was like, yep, this is brilliant. I'm on a roll. I know what I'm doing. I was still working in PR at this time, and I really struggled with being away from my son. So I'd gone back to work at the BBC, but this time in publicity, and I had quite a senior job. And I was working in Abu Dhabi one minute, I was in Dubai the next, I was in South Africa the next. He's 18 months old. I'm struggling with being away from him. And I was like, this is not what I want to do. So I took a job working at Thorpe Park, knowing as the head of PR that I was going to go in there and I was going to leave within a year. And as much as I loved the job, and it was an amazing job, putting celebrities on roller coasters and designing great big campaigns and doing all of these wonderful things, I just knew that I wanted to be the mum on the school gates. I wanted to be there for him. And somehow I wanted to be able to help other people tell their stories. And I didn't know how I was going to do that. And then a mentor who we share in common, Lisa Johnson, said to me, Nick, why aren't you actually doing PR on your own terms in your own way? And I was like, fair dues. Again, needed calling out on it. And that's when I launched my business. And I have since helped hundreds of people get seen safely in the media through strategic storytelling and through telling their stories, have been able to impact other people's lives. And for me, it is all about impact and how we can make a difference to others through what it is that we do. And funnily enough, it's all come full circle because I was a journalist starting out telling stories and telling stories in the news, but now I get to help make the news, but in a way that's actually really helping others. And when people actually go out there and they tell their stories, what they're actually doing is shining a light, yes, on elements of their story so people connect and resonate with them, but then people then come and find those people to work with them because they're experts in their field. And what that then does is it helps change other people's lives in the process. And I think that for me just feels like I've finally found where I'm meant to be and what I'm meant to be doing.
Absolutely love this. And there's so much that you've covered already that I just want to dive into them all and unpick it all. The first thing I'd love to talk more about is as somebody who's equally, somebody who identifies as being very ambitious, hardworking, had some big goals, had some great successes. What I found is everything I thought success was supposed to be wasn't quite what I thought it was. And I got to a point where you're making more money than you've made and more impact and all these kind of milestones that you thought would bring you fulfillment and happiness. That wasn't quite the case. So just what you said there about, working on Radio One, being a successful journalist, working with huge brands. I'd love you to just share what was some of like the expectations versus reality, some of the stuff that you thought this would be where I'd be happy, but in reality, what was some of that like? And I know you said part of it was like the catalyst was having your son and then going, I need to make a change now. But prior to that, what were some of the things where you actually, I thought this was the thing, but it's not it?
I think I just reached a point up until 40. I think I just allowed life to happen to me. If I'm really honest, I think that's exactly what happened. I had a plan. So I was very much kind of like, right, okay, I'm going to come out of university and I've studied journalism. So I've got my degree and I'm going to go in and I'm going to read the news on the local radio station. That's going to be amazing. And then from there, I'm going to work in London. And then from London, I am going to go into TV. And then from TV, everything's going to open up. I'm going to be the next Davina McCall. I'm going to be out there presenting, and everything's going to just magically fall into place. But actually, when you look at all of that, why? Like, why? What was the purpose behind all of that? And when I remember sitting down and having a conversation with my best friend at the time and saying to her, I'm thinking of leaving the BBC. I was the entertainment reporter for BBC Three at the time. I'm thinking of leaving the BBC and I thinking about PR and you work in PR. And she was just like, yeah, I work in PR. And I was like, but if I was to work in PR, I think I just want to make a difference. Maybe like work in a charity sector and at that point, I mean, look, the alarm bells were always there. They should have been ringing. I just wanted to be able to help others in a bigger way. How on earth I thought I was ever going to do that through, reading the news or doing whatever else it was that I was doing. I I really don't know, but I think I just buried all of that under a like very unhealthy slice of ambition, which meant missing out on going out with friends. Like I was the one that was stuck in the newsroom. Everyone else was out having a lovely time in their early 20s. I was reading the news with John Peel on the radio at like gone midnight on a Saturday night. That was me. And everyone would be like, oh, wow, that's such an amazing thing to achieve. But it didn't necessarily feel that. There was no fulfillment in any of it. When I really look at it, it was just like, right, that's the next step. I want to be on TV. Well, why?
Because we're taught from a young age that that's success, right? The people on TV must be so happy they've got everything, fame, fortune, and so we chase it blindly if we're not careful, especially if we are ambitious and we're driven by growth and achieving outcomes and so on. And I think it's such a common story that I think it was Jim Carrey that said it years ago, and I'll butcher the quote. He said it much better than this, but it was something like, I hope everybody achieves everything they think they want so they can learn that that's not where success is. And I think it's an example of that, right? You're there on these big primetime shows and what have you. But actually, the reality of it is it's late nights, it's missing out. And I really relate with that. Like when everybody else is in those early years of going out and socializing and having fun, people like you and I, we're doing the late nights, getting in early morning from working. And actually, you can feel like you've really missed out on something, can't you? If you've not been able to do that.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think also what was really interesting is when I was at the BBC and I was working in TV, I've managed to hit all of my milestones as I went through. And they used to say to us when we were working at News 24, as it was then, it was the BBC News channel now. And they used to say to us, well, look, if you can come up with some ideas, you can go out with a camera crew and you can go and film it. So, of course, I was full of the ideas. But the ideas I always had were very philanthropic. So let's talk about Steve Cram and Cram tags and how that is basically helping save runners' lives. And let's look at young people affected or infected by HIV and AIDS. And those were when I look back now, where I was doing reports around domestic violence and how we can actually help with things like that, those were the pieces that I will step away from that career from feeling so proud, not standing on a red carpet, sticking the microphone under Simon Cowell's nose, which was lovely, but it was just like, yes, that's lovely, but I'm not doing anything. I'm not helping anyone and I'm not changing the narrative. Whereas those pieces actually really did change the narrative because it got people thinking. It got people thinking about what life was like for those who were quite often, young, underrepresented kind of minorities who were going through something that lots of people never really understood. And that for me, those pieces were the kind of things that actually it made all of those missing out on those nights out, all of those kind of things where my friends were going off and getting drunk. Fine, I can park all of that because actually what's happening is I'm using my voice and my position as a reporter to be able to go out there and shine a light on the subjects that really matter.
Yeah, and that means that it's about fulfillment, it's about something that's meaningful, purposeful, and bigger than just your own selfish needs and wants, right? It's bigger than you. And I think when we can find work that we do that does that, it's like it's not always easy. There's often sacrifices, but it's at least worth it and it feels worth it. Let's look at the flip side. So obviously working at that level, there is a certain level of sacrifice. It's not all glamour like we think it is and so on. But working with some huge brands and celebrities and people that are maybe top of their game, obviously we have a lot of people that listen to this show that are building a brand and that are building an online business and things like that. That must have been a great kind of school to learn about why some of the biggest brands and celebrities in the world are where they are. So if there's anything you could share with the listener today in terms of tips from those people when it comes to getting your message out there, building an audience, branding, and I guess just how they conduct themselves and think about their business, what would you share?
I think for me, what was really interesting, there were so many different experiences that I went through, like, moments where I'd take journalists abroad, and as part of that press trip that they were there with me, and you'd get to see behind the curtain, as it were, and you'd see the bad behavior that was going on, especially with celebrities. And you were just like, oh, come on. But the bigger brands and things like that, what they really had and what they'd really nailed was their positioning and their messaging. And for me, obviously, I'm a PR expert, is what I do, journalist, PR expert, and helping people get seen safely in the media. I think when you understand your positioning, where you are, where you want to be, and whose lives you want to change, that is that is what is like the key ingredients for absolutely everything. So for anyone that's looking to grow a brand, be out there, be kind of getting their name out there in a bigger way, there are ways that you can very safely utilize the media to the best effect. And like working in agency, working in-house, I think what I've really learned through PR is that, you have to have that wise counsel of someone that can see the media landscape, that can say to you, look, this is how we think this could work really well. This is how we can amplify this message, and this is how we can take this to the next level. For instance, things that we did. So we helped to launch TV channel Eden back in the day. So TV channel Eden, for those of you that don't know, in the UK, it's all about natural history programming. So a big prominent person that we would have like with their programming on there would be Sir David Attenborough. So we actually created a giant sculpture of a polar bear and its cub, and we floated that on an iceberg down the Thames. And like this, literally back in the day, like this kick-started everyone floating things down the Thames. Like you probably have opened up a paper or you've seen a stunt somewhere where something was floated down the Thames. But the polar bear and its cub was the first one. And that went on to win like international awards. And it did wonders for the channel because it just really set everything up. Everyone was just like, this is really exciting. It's synonymous with Attenborough. And it really changed the way that people started thinking about PR. And then worked on various campaigns with, individuals who would come to the agency and say, look, I want to be out there in a bigger way. I'm doing all of these things. How can I get seen? One chap in particular came to us, and it wasn't a particularly easy sell to the media. Sometimes when you're approaching the media and you're saying, look, we think this person would be great for you to feature, sometimes, they need a little bit of persuasion, and it comes down to relationships and building relationships with those journalists so that they take on board what it is that you're saying. And, in the end, this chap who ran a series of productions based on Meatloaf and like Bat Out of Hell and everything else. He does these stage shows and they sell out all across the UK, but he didn't have a personal brand at the time. So a lot of the stuff that I was working on was getting him featured. And it took time, but I got him into the Sunday Times. And off of the back of the Sunday Times, he actually ended up with his own production in London as a stage show that he was able to be able to do. And that's what you can do with the media. I think for me, when it comes down to working with entrepreneurs now in particular and brands, it's about looking at the bigger picture and understanding where it is that you want to be. And then let's work backwards from there. One of my clients that I've worked with for a long time now is the fabulous Mira Naran. And Mira's story is particularly poignant in that her 8-year-old son, Dev, tragically died in a smart motorway collision when he was 8. And Mira took her grief from losing her young son and she turned it into a campaign. Now, when she came to me, she said, no one's listening to me. And between us, we worked out a plan for how we could actually get her voice out into the media in a way that was actually going to make decision makers sit up and start taking notice. And
Wow.
within 8, 9 months, she was at the palace getting an MBE.
Wow.
She has recently been speaking with the WHO. She has changed the highways code. She's campaigning constantly and tirelessly for safer drivers on safer roads. What you won't realize is when you sit your driving test, if you are learning how to drive now, as part of it, you will have to do a segment where you learn how to do CPR. That is a direct result of Mira's campaign.
Oh my
And
God.
now you can see what I'm saying in terms of we take a story and we make it work and we utilize the power of the media to be able to get it out there in a bigger way. And we are making impact and waves and making changes to other people's lives.
This episode is sponsored by Laura Robson and Back Pocket Office. Now, let me tell you about this one. Laura is somebody you need in your life. I have got her in my life, and all I can say about her is I don't know how I'd live without her. And it's true. If you're anything like me, you will hate tech. You'll be great at launching and creating the marketing material and delivering on the actual product that you're selling. But when it comes to the back end, making sure it's all automated and it all works, I just can't be bothered. And if you're the same, Laura is the solution. Laura is a systems strategist and she's also a certified launch and funnel specialist. And if you are a service provider, if you're a coach, consultant, any kind of online business that provides some kind of online service, then Laura is there to help sort out all your funnels and systems for you. With over 14 years experience, she's somebody who's going to get you solutions quick. She's easy to speak to, very approachable, and just really friendly and nice, basically. So if you are ready to get your systems and your funnels all sorted for you and work with one of the best in the business, go check out backpocketoffice.co.uk and connect with Laura on socials. The links are literally right below this episode in the show notes. Go click it, and I mean this. Go and do it now. You will not regret it.
Absolutely incredible. And if somebody's listening and they want more specific tips then around messaging, around positioning, and also I guess people will be listening thinking that's incredible, but that's come from a really extreme, tragic story. And maybe they feel like, well, I don't have anything that stands out like that. Is there any go-to steps, tips, a framework, anything you can give us, like the do's and the don'ts that will help someone formulate the right messaging, the right positioning for their brand to get more seen?
The number one thing, everything has to start with the story. So you need to be crystal clear on what your story is. And once you're clear on what your story is, what the angles are that could potentially work for the media that will actually entice them to want to feature your story, what you can do is you can weave in the messaging that you want to get across. So the messaging around what it is that you do. So you might not have as big a story as Mira, but you might have done something at some point that has made people sit up and take notice. Like I've literally this last week just had 3 people featured across 14 separate pages in 2 glossy monthly magazines. Now, from those, we have a lady who started a tech business, an award-winning tech business, when she was 69. That is her story. The other lady, yeah, okay, she is phenomenal. She rode across the Atlantic. And while she did so, she didn't realize that she had cancer, but she found out subsequently when she got back that she did. But she's now using that as a springboard, as a platform to do motivational speaking, and that is her kind of story. And then I've just had another lady featured in a double page spread in the Daily Mail, and she's a relationship coach, but her story all starts from and stems from the fact that she cheated on her husband in the first year of marriage, but she needed to be able to unpick why she'd actually done that and get to grips with the underlying reasons why that had happened. And now that's what she actually helps other people do as well, so that they understand the trauma, the difficulties, whatever else it is underneath it all. And the other story that we've just had featured is a campaign for the lovely Caroline Strawson talking about no visible bruises and how she is looking to educate police officers, anyone that would deal with victims and people that are going through domestic violence and coercive control in particular, where you don't actually see any signs of physical abuse, but physiological signs are there for everyone to see. And Caroline wants to actually train the police and doctors in particular to be able to spot these signs, that when someone comes to them and says, I'm in a difficult situation, or they're being taken into a situation, or police officers are called to an address or something like that, that they can actually see coercive control is going on. And rather than the person that's going through this feeling shut down, they feel heard and they feel safe enough to be able to take that next step as and when they are ready to do so, and hopefully be able to exit a controlling or coercive relationship. So those are the kind of stories that I think I'm naturally drawn to anyway, because it's that mission, and everyone listening will have a reason why you are doing what it is that you are doing. There will be something behind it all. Maybe you grew up in care, so you want to change things for other people that have been in care. Maybe you've had something that's happened to you that actually was really unfair, but now you want to change things for other people you've also seen in a similar situation, so you are changing things for them. And that for me is where the true power of the media comes into its own, because you can then really highlight the fact that this work is going on, but then you can reach those people that really need you. Does
I
that
think
answer your
it
question?
does, and I think it speaks perfectly to the idea, like the basic principle in business that we know statistically, if you take a business brand and a personal brand, generally the personal brand is going to do so much better. Why? Because people buy from people, and we all hear they know, they like, they trust. And actually, a lot of people, when they get into building a business, it is purpose led, it is mission led, usually from a personal experience. And it's having the courage to share that personal experience and be open about it, which is the thing that gets people to buy into the mission and then want to get involved with the brand. So I think it speaks perfectly to that and how key that is. And I know some people listening find it difficult sharing things they've been through. And obviously, it has to be something you can get yourself into a position where you are comfortable. But if you can have that courage and that confidence to be vulnerable and share that stuff, that's where quite often the magic is going to happen in your business. And you can then really serve others at a higher level and really help other people. I think for a lot of business owners, when they're listening, they feel like they're doing a million and one things, especially like when they're a one person band, they're in those earlier stages, which a lot of the listeners to this show are. And they'll hear people like myself speaking about it's not the person who's the best at what they do, it's the person who's the best known that will build the bigger business and have the bigger impact. They'll hear us saying things like you need to be working on a visibility strategy and audience growth, email list building, getting on podcasts, speaking in memberships, standing on stage, all this kind of stuff. It's become apparent for me that I think a lot of those people, A, don't understand the role PR can play within that visibility strategy. But B, they feel like, oh, I'm not ready for PR, or it's something that comes later. So I just wondered, from your experience and what you do, and speaking to that kind of listener, when is the right time for a business owner to do PR, and how specifically can it help them when it comes to audience building and email list building and things like that?
I would say straight away, because until you're crystal clear on your story, you're not going to be crystal clear on your messaging or your positioning or where you want to be seen or how you want to be seen. My feeling is that as long as you have a website, you're good to go. Like that is literally all you need. And you only need a one pager so that you've got something in place so that a journalist can look you up and go, right, okay, great. You just need to be crystal clear on that story and how that will relate and how you want to reach your audience. There's nothing more than that. It doesn't have to be complicated. And I know we hold ourselves back from wanting to be seen because it's scary. Like I am not comfortable most of the time telling my story, or I'll happily go on to podcasts and do things or be in magazines and all of the things, but I do it because I can't tell my clients to do it if I'm not doing it. So I do it through that way, and I use that to actually make sure that I show up in the way that I do.
It's that phrase that I use, which is focus on service, not self. If we're always in our own mind of how we feel and what will people think of us, then we're not going to serve at the highest level. What if somebody's listed that and they're like, yeah, but I've got people saying I need to invest in my YouTube or my podcast, or I need to stand on stages, like, and there's only one me, there's only so much time, there's only so many resources. What would your advice be, and sort of your reasoning? Why should PR be something they invest in early on? Why should that be a focus when there's a million and other one things they could be doing to grow that audience and get more known?
Having that, it's a foundation for absolutely everything. So it's about understanding what is it you're going to say when you stand up on stage. It's all very well you want to go up and stand on stage. Everyone can stand up and go, right, I want to talk about this. But are you crystal clear? Is that then feeding back into the bigger mission? Have you got crystal clear on what that mission is, where it is you want to be, and where you want to be seen? Having the media trust tag. So when you get featured in the media, having media trust tags, so the logo, so as featured in the Daily Mail, as featured in, wherever else it is, Top Santi magazine, Red magazine, all of those, having those on your website, what it does is it just elevates you to that next level. It gives you that credibility. It enables people to be like, okay, well, she knows what she's doing, or he knows what he's doing, because you are then seen as the go-to expert. And that's what being aligned with a media publication can absolutely do for you. It gives you that credibility, which enables you to amplify what it is that you want to say, which enables you to then be able to reach more people.
And it
And the
helps you
more that
get
you
on
do
those
it,
stages. It helps
yeah,
you
of
get
course
on
it
those
is.
podcasts, right?
Yeah, 100%. The more that you do in terms of, it's like stepping stones, but getting out there in terms of the media, becoming known as the go-to person that the media want to speak to on a given subject just enables you to be the person that they all turn to when something happens. And you will be so surprised at the amazing opportunities that will come your way. I've had people that have been, featured in the FT. They're now like, they're off being invited to do panels and goodness knows what else. That all started from them actually putting themselves out there and saying, I'm gonna go out there. I'm gonna put myself forward for opportunities, and I'm gonna be seen in this way. And I've seen it with so many of my clients where they've gone, right, okay, so I'm a divorce and breakup coach, and now what's happening is the media go to them. So every time that they need someone to speak to about divorce and breakup and how you might be able to have an amicable separation for people, or how you can have difficult conversations, for instance, they'll go to my client Eve Stanway because they know that that is what Eve is synonymous with. And it's it's finding those journalists, the journalists that are going to look after you, that are going to help you in terms of getting your message out there, but it all starts with a story. And what we have to remember about storytelling is that it's 22 times more memorable than facts alone. So when you go out there with a story and you are telling a story and you're weaving in your messaging of what it is that you want to say, what's going to happen is that what you've said is going to resonate with someone. It doesn't matter where they are on their journey, it will resonate with someone and they will come and find you. And they might be following you for a bit, but eventually, if they have a problem, they know that you're the person that can help solve that problem for them. And that's how it works. But you have to take that first start. And you can't really be like, well, I've got to do branding and I've got to do, and I know there are so many competing things when you start out in building a business, and you want to be seen in as big a way as possible. PR should be absolutely foundational for everything. And I don't think people realize this enough. I think they just think, oh, it's just about being seen in the media. It really isn't. It's a much bigger authority builder, credibility builder than anything you can ever get, because you've got to remember that people trust the titles that you are then synonymous with. So say you're featured in Red Magazine and someone has been buying Red Magazine since it first came out. You're quoted in there. You're synonymous with that magazine. So therefore they already trust you. So you've built that trust in a much bigger way.
This episode is sponsored by Dr. Tania King-Mohammad. She is the high ticket woman, the #1 best-selling author of the high ticket method, and one of the most sought after high ticket experts in the game. Basically, if you are an entrepreneur who is serious about scaling their business, you need to grab a copy of her book right now. Literally, I have read it and it is a game changer. It will blow your flipping mind. Tania is the mentor that the entrepreneurs call once they are finished playing small and are ready to start charging their worth. Working with Tania is all about creating consistent high ticket sales and doing it in a way where you can create a freedom level income without the constant hustle and grind like a lot of the other mentors bang on about. If you're listening to this show, you already know you're somebody that's meant for more and is willing to go and work for it. So basically, you need to get into Tania's world. Go and grab a copy of her book right now on Amazon and make sure you give her a cheeky little follow on Instagram. She is at Freedom with Tania and she's consistently giving strategies, tips and advice over there for free so you can start charging your worth and actually starting to believe in it.
So interesting what you said there about storytelling and the importance of it. And also I've heard it said about like the brain, not just about relatability, but actually remembers the information better if it's heard it through storytelling versus just facts and statistics alone. So I think that's a super important piece of information for everybody to remember, like after this this podcast, is how often are you weaving storytelling in rather than just telling people what your business does or what they need to be doing or why they need to be doing it. If you can share stories, that is where they're going to be not only more relatable to who you are and what your brand is, but they're more likely to remember what it is they need to do as well. So let's say that person listening, they are in a position where they've heard you. They're like, all right, Nicola, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do more PR. But they're maybe not at that point yet where they can just pay a company like yours to do it for them. Have you got any tips in terms of how to get in front of those journalists, how to be noticed by the journalists, where to find them, anywhere to be, because I think if it's brand new to people just like, I've got no clue where to start. What would you say?
It's about finding the right journalists. So it's not about just kind of launching yourself into something, oh, this is cost effective, and so therefore I'm just going to put myself out there. Something that a lot of people don't realize is that PR is really important when it comes to reputational management. So you have to look at doing things the right way. It's no good in terms of kind of just being like, oh, well, I'll just go and join this because it's only a £5 a month or £6 a month or whatever, and then I'm going to get all these opportunities coming to me. Yes, you can do that. But what you ideally really want to do is get in front of the right journalists, and the journalists that genuinely care about your story as opposed to they just care about the story. So it's about finding the people that actually genuinely want to get you seen, but keep you safe at the same time. Those are the journalists. So yes, absolutely. You can go on to X, formerly Twitter, and you can look at hashtag journo requests and you can look at opportunities along those lines. But do your due diligence. Who are the journalists? What are they looking for? What are the kind of like, what are the things that they've written before? Do your values align? Because this is so important. If you go out there and you're randomly just spraying and praying and hoping that you're going to get seen, it is never going to work. This is why strategic storytelling works, because you've really thought through, right, okay, these are the publications that I really align with. These are the ones that would work for me. And now I've got crystal clear on my story. Remember, that is absolutely number one. Get clear on your story, understand what it is that you want to say, like what the bigger mission and vision is, like what are your values, what sets everything on fire for you. Find those publications that also align with that. And then you can start making approaches. And quite often in glossy magazines, there's usually a page where you can see where the journalists, like the names of the journalists, sometimes they even give the email addresses out. But you can also do searches as well for who journalists are in terms of the ones that write for different publications. Sometimes, though, journalists, I mean, they're always busy. Like they're always busy. So sometimes journalists won't come back to you, and you can be like, oh, this is so frustrating. I'm approaching journalists for these opportunities, and, they're not coming back to me, and I don't understand why. And it can just be because they've missed your email. You can follow up once, no more than once, but you can follow up once. But I think everyone needs some kind of basic training in terms of how to do this. I think your reputation is too important. I really do. And whether that's working with someone like me or it's working with someone else, it doesn't matter. But you really need to understand the safe way to be able to get seen in the media.
What happens if we follow up twice, just so we know the consequence? What would happen?
Journalists just they have there is actually like a WhatsApp blacklist group.
Oh my God.
Now, like if you just followed up twice, they're probably not going to put you in that group. You'd have to make a real pain of yourself to go into that group. But they all talk and they all communicate with each other all of the time. So it's not worth like annoying someone. If you annoy someone a couple of times and they're like, oh, just leave me alone, it's fine to just say, oh, just checking whether or not you saw something. If they still don't respond, you just have to move on. They're just not interested. They usually come back pretty quickly if they're interested in something. It's just worth keeping them on side. And someone like myself who's worked in PR now for over 17 years, I've got relationships with all of these people that have been built over that time. And that is why there is an entire industry in PR actually built around people that have those relationships. Like journalists come along to our events like Impact Live, where they will stand up on stage and they'll talk because they'll consider themselves friends. And they consider themselves, because they've been in my world for such a long amount of time, that they're kind of like, well, no, we work with Nicola. And I've had that happen where people have come to me and said, oh, I've got this situation or this is happening. We've been able to make sure that the headlines have been removed, or we've been able to make sure that they're protected. And, part of the job that I was doing when I was at Thorpe Park, I was keeping stuff out of the media as much as I was getting stuff into the media. And I think that that's really, really important, that you have someone that understands how to be able to talk to the journalists and just be like, legally, no, we need this is not right, we need to change that, this is what we need to do. You've got to have that background, I think, to give you that 360 approach to everything. So if you are just getting started, just make sure that everything is fully aligned, but make sure you've got that story 100%, like, so you're happy with it. And sometimes it can feel quite hard to try and work out what your story is. Sometimes it takes another person to be able to help you and say that that's much more likely to appeal to the media. But a really great way for you to understand everything is to go out there and actually read and listen and watch the media. Like you've got to do that because otherwise, and that doesn't mean to say immersing yourself in the news like, 5 times a day and getting very negative as a result of it.
But just getting
But
a feel for the angles, what
get
people
a
are
feel for
interested
the
in.
kind of things that they're interested in, and then you can take it from there.
What about email subject lines so that we stand out? Is there any tips around that?
Yeah, they were like I always remember I went along to training once and it was run by journalists and they said there were a couple of email subject lines that always tend to work. They love exclusives because obviously they always want to look good to their editors. So if you're emailing a commissioning editor or something like that, they've always got to take it to the next level. So it's always got to go to the editor unless you're speaking to the editor in chief of a particular publication or the editor where the buck stops with them. 9 times out of 10, they need to get buy-in from other people. So exclusive, giving them an exclusive always works really well. Um, on that training, someone said to me, "Oh, something else that works really well is your story on page three, dot, dot, dot." A journalist will always open that because they're like, "Oh my gosh, what have I done wrong?" Um, but you can then say, I thought it was brilliant. And actually, if you want to take the story forward, here's a way to be able to do that. So that's it's a good way to be able to do it. But think in terms of headlines, always. Always think in terms of headlines. If you can put and you can sum up your story in a very short headline, and just use that as the subject line. And of course, if journalists are particularly looking for something and you've seen like on X that they're looking for a particular thing, use that as the subject line for when you respond. Because then that way they're not having to search through their inbox to try and find things.
Some great advice. This has been brilliant, Nicola. What I want to do now is go into some of the general life advice questions that I give to every guest. So the first one is, as you reflect on your life, what is some of the best advice you've received that you still live by today and why?
Always trust your intuition. Always trust your intuition. Like it's never ever going to let you down. So that feeling that doesn't feel right, something's a little bit off or something's not quite right, listen to it always. Never ever ignore it. And I always trust my intuition for everything. Like if something doesn't feel quite right, I'd rather walk away. And I would always say to people as well, like when it comes to, media coverage and stuff like that, if when you're speaking to a journalist in that first conversation, if you ask them, what is your angle for this? Where are you taking this story? And they come back with something and you're like, oh my gosh, the alarm bells are ringing and everything else, walk away and just say, I'm really sorry. I don't think this is right for me. I don't want to waste any more of your time. I really appreciate you calling me, but this isn't going to work for me. You've got to have the confidence to be able to do that. So have confidence to be able to also trust your intuition.
Okay, flip side is, what is some of the worst advice? It might have been well meaning, it might be something that everybody speaks about online, some of those quotes and so on, but in reality, your experience is it's not good advice at all.
That's a tough one. I think one of the worst pieces of advice that I ever received was, oh, just tell them. It's just like, I really shouldn't have done that. So um, I was doing a trial to work at Radio 1 at the time, and I was working for Heart FM. And Heart FM, like my editor at the time, had said to me, "Oh, you can go off and you can work for other like publications and other places as long as they're not a competitor." I didn't see Radio One as being a competitor to Heart FM because they were in London, so I didn't see the issue. And the advice was, oh, just tell your editor at Heart FM. And that was the worst. That was the worst piece of advice. I should not have listened to it. And I should have just kept my head down and just like, gone through because it opened a massive can of worms. And oh gosh, it just wasn't worth it. So I think sometimes people are very well meaning And they want you to go through things. But I think it actually feeds back into what I was saying in terms of trust your own instincts.
Right.
Because if I'd listened to my own instincts, I wouldn't have said anything. I would have just
Right.
kept quiet and I would have been fine
Yeah.
as it was. Like there were all kinds of problems behind the scenes. But I think that is always going to be the best advice.
Okay, one of the things that we want to try and leave the listeners with is some guidance around how they can live a happy life, a healthy life, and a fulfilled life. So, if you were to leave the listener with three truths that if they follow these things, they're going to generally live a happy, healthy, fulfilling life, what would you say?
Always be kind, always be kind, and always treat everyone as part of that kindness. Always treat everyone the way that you would want to be treated. It doesn't matter who anyone is, it doesn't matter where they come from or anything else. Some of the loveliest conversations I've ever had have been with cleaners, with people that have been, working like round the clock when I've been working like all the hours and everything else. Always make time for everyone. I think that's really important. And that comes into the kindness and just really looking out for something. If something doesn't sit right with you, I think, like, say it doesn't sit right with you. I think it's really important that you are authentic to who you are. If something isn't right, you need to call it out. And that doesn't need to be like, shaming people or anything else, but I think it is about lifting other people up. And if you can see that something isn't like working alongside that and it isn't helping others, then I think that's really, really important that you kind of say, this isn't sitting right with me in some shape or form. And I think the third thing is about understanding that everything, no matter how difficult things can feel, no matter what challenges you're going through, light and love will always conquer all. So it will always, always enable you to reset, to dig deep, to find those moments where you're just like, I can't do this. Like, I can't go on anymore. But if you hold on to love and you know that in your heart that it's all about love, it's going to take you forward. So I
Beautiful.
think those would be mine.
Nicola, if people want to reach out to you, connect with you, how can they find you?
So the best way to find me is on my website, nicolaRowley.com. I'm also on Instagram as at Nicola J. Rowley PR, and I spend a lot of time over on LinkedIn as well, and I'm at Nicola J. Rowley. So those are the best ways to find me. And then I've got two non-fiction books. I've got three fiction books, but two non-fiction books. So The Power of PR is mine, and then also Story Seller, which I've co-written with the fabulous global sales strategist Arif Iskan. And between us, we talk about the importance of stories and how you can take storytelling to help drive sales in your business. And it basically underlines everything that I've just been saying to you throughout this chat, Matt, in terms of stories literally underline everything that you do. If you want to understand more about PR, the power of PR is going to help you with that. And as part of both books, they're both myself and Arif, when we were writing them, we've written parts of our stories in them because it's so important for anyone that reads them to understand stories, and storytelling really is the foundation for everything. It's not even just for business, it's for life. Like you will connect more with people and people buy on an emotional level, and it drives trust like nothing else.
Absolutely incredible. Nicola, the final question that I ask all my guests: what is your personal definition of success?
I think my personal definition of success is being able to help others realize that storytelling really is the most powerful thing that we have in terms of changing other people's lives. Like a story can make the most profound difference to someone. And through telling it, through amplifying it, however we do that, whether we utilize the power of the media, whether we get our story out there through a podcast, through, blogs, through whatever else it is, that's how we can reach more people and we can change lives. And I think that's why we're here. So for me, my definition of success is to make people realize as much as possible that storytelling really is the most important thing.
Nicola, thank you so much. That's been brilliant. Thank you.